Hello, everyone, and welcome to our next Meet the Filmmakers panel. This one is on human trafficking and human and sex trafficking, actually, which they are very, very closely related. I am Nora Armani, founding artistic director of the Socially Relevant Film Festival, New York, and we are here today to talk to you about the films and with the filmmakers who have made films that talk about social issues that deal with human trafficking. The Socially Relevant Film Festival has been in existence since 2014. That was the first annual edition of the festival, and we have presented so far over 400 films from 33 countries, 35 countries actually, and they have screened in different versions of the festival, different editions of the festival, and we have, I think we're having a sound problem. I don't know if anybody is not hearing me. Please signal. I don't think so. All right. So the festival has screened to date over 400 films from 35 countries, all revolving around important social issues. This edition, the current edition of the festival, has 12 different themes in it, ranging from climate change and sustainability, to disability, to genocide, to empowering women, to forms of resistance, indigenous populations, which was the talk we just had with the filmmakers of that series. And this is now human trafficking. We also have migration, immigration, LGBTQ rights, youth and children, and also race, prejudice, and discrimination, which was also yesterday. So the festival is an annual event, and we are exclusively focused on social issues. Unlike some other festivals who show some films with social issues, we only show social issues, and we urge filmmakers to submit to the festival and not be discouraged if they are not picked, because it doesn't reflect at all on the quality of the film sometimes, but it has to do with the way we put together our program to present a particular year. We do not go ahead and choose the themes first. We choose the films. We go by the best quality of the films, and we listen to the filmmakers to find out what kind of stories they are trying to tell us. And out of those stories, we end up putting together a selection. This year, we have 63 films from 33 countries that are coming to you in 12 film block segments in themes that are talking about the themes that I just mentioned. So without further ado, let me open the floor and introduce you to our moderator today, who is Dirk Robertson. Dirk is a graduate of the London School of Economics, like myself, visiting fellow, Southampton Solent University, United Kingdom. He's a professional actor, writer, and musician. He's a member of Crime Writers Association UK and Mystery Writers of America. Dirk is a long-standing member of the Socially Relevant Film Festival New York team, and he is an ardent film viewer. He's one of the people who pretty much almost watches everything that is submitted to us, if such a thing is possible. And we have a team of people who select the films initially, making the initial choices. And then, of course, we go and deeper into each film selection and decide how the program is going to be put together. And Dirk is there throughout this selection process. So without further ado, I will pass the mic to him and allow our wonderful filmmakers and panelists to have an interesting conversation. I have one more filmmaker who will join you, Ivana Todorovic, and there she is. So I am going to move into the green room and hear and see you. Oh, she's having a problem. She keeps jumping in and out. But anyway, you can start the conversation and I will let her in when she comes on. Thank you. Dirk, you are muted. Please unmute yourself. Thank you.
Meeting. Oh, there we are. Am I there?
Yeah,
are we
now
good?
we can hear you.
All right. Good afternoon, or good morning, or good evening, depending where you are. In a previous professional life, as a social worker, I was involved in resettling many people that were involved in the sex trade and the sex business, particularly juveniles in the United Kingdom. So I've got a long experience in the ramifications and the mechanics of that particular business. And for me, it's a human rights issue. And whilst many people have different takes on it and different dialogue, from people that are involved in sex business themselves, putting it forward as a piece of self-determination and looking after themselves, right up to people that are just trafficked, extorted and exploited throughout their life, from a young life up to a young adult life. Is very different aspects to it. It's like a diamond you hold up to the light. There's so many different facets to it. But in my opinion, nobody voluntarily gets involved in the sex industry that isn't mentally ill. And that for that reason, I think it's a human rights issue. The films today are terrific, and they all take a different slant and a different approach. So let's meet the filmmakers and let's hear the background, the process for making the film, and what they were trying to say. Let's start with Julia.
Thank you so much, Dirk, and I'm so thrilled to hear that you're also passionate about this issue, because it's an issue that's very dear to my heart. I was inspired to start raising awareness on this issue after volunteering at a children's shelter down in the valley here in LA, and meeting these teenage girls were 14, 15 years old and had been trafficked and had been through the most horrific abuse. And you could see the level of trauma and shame written all over them. And it really affected me. And it became one of these things I thought I've got to do something about. And I don't have kids myself, but so I've always done a lot of work with underprivileged children, trying to kind of do something to help those who weren't blessed to have a family or have lost families, etc. And so I decided to kind of invest my time and some money and resources into raising awareness on this issue, because I think prevention is key. And if we can educate teenagers and families more about what trafficking looks like, and educate people working with teenagers as to some of the signs to look out for that might indicate a teenager is being groomed for trafficking, that is the best case scenario. If that girl can be saved, or that boy for that matter, because there are young teenage boys that are trafficked too, can be saved. Otherwise, it takes an enormous amount of resources in terms of aftercare for the trauma, in terms of rehabilitation needed to get survivors back into being functioning members of society. So the more that can be done to educate, to stop the problem from happening, the better, as far as I'm concerned. And I think film can be such a powerful medium to do that. I think often from the research I've done is that people tend to go and see a documentary once they're already interested in the subject matter. But a narrative film has the power through in an audience emotionally engaging with the characters and their dilemmas to get people interested, and then they want to do more. And one of the things that we do with the media that we create is we organize a lot of community and outreach screenings. We also get it screened in schools. I encourage other teenagers that get to see the film to champion the issue and get their friends to see it, because the more we spread this message, the better. And then we also create some supplemental educational materials to go with the film. So once people are engaged, we have something that's a little bit more informational as a follow-up, so they can learn a little bit more about it. Because it breaks my heart, you know, the stories I've heard really just break my heart. And if a child is trafficked, it affects not only the child themselves, but as you see in my film, the whole family unit. It also affects the parents, the sister, you know, all those around Angie. And I made a film about trafficking happening to a middle-class family, because I wanted people to get a little shaken up, and I wanted to get the conversation started on this issue. And this does happen in middle-class families, but the majority of children and teenagers trafficked are from lower income families and from foster youth. But we all need to kind of like collectively come together and raise our voices on this issue for stronger penalties for people buying teenagers for sex, more education in schools, and also with young men too, and men to like educate them that this is not acceptable, and the implications of what buying somebody underage from sex can have on that teenager for the rest of their lives.
Quite right. And of course, you're coming face to face with organised crime.
Well, you're exactly right, Dirk. And the reason why trafficking exists is because it's $1 billion business, and these traffickers are making a fortune. And a lot of the gangs that used to previously deal more in drugs and guns and that type of business have realized what a lucrative business trafficking is. Because basically you can sell a gram of cocaine once, but you can sell a young girl thousands of times. And what happens to these children is horrific. I mean, young girls are often made to have sex with up to 50 men a day. It is horrifying abuse for a young girl to endure. And what these traffickers are doing is they're literally stealing their childhoods from them and ruining their lives. It is just so wrong. And they're so clever. There's so much money at stake. There's often so much, as we've all seen with some of the recent high-profile cases, there's a lot of kind of cover-up that goes on in these things. So we really need to push for more accountability and more action to be taken to really stop this.
Quite right. I've also felt that people should be charged with attempted murder.
I totally agree. Yeah. I also think people should be put up on if someone is caught with a minor, I think they should be put up on a website and shamed, because I think that would stop people from doing it. You know, if there was like a lot more kind of consequence to fear.
I'm sorry, I have to interrupt, because I think it's better if we just take a turn. Everybody gets a chance to say something, and then we go in depth into each film, because I don't want somebody to sit there and wait while somebody else is talking. And I'm seeing here Ivana, she keeps coming in and out, and she's telling me that she is at the Chicago Museum and the internet is going on and off. So the moment she comes on, let's catch her and have her say something. Sure. But now she's on, but I don't know how long that on is going to last. Let's see.
Ivana, let's have you while you're here.
Yes, I'm really sorry for this. I'm in the traveling, so we are today in Chicago and came to see Art Institute. So yes, that's when it's the time of the interview, but that it is what it is. Hello.
Hello. Okay.
Yes. We were talking. Go ahead. Tell us about your film. Oh, there you go. We lost her.
All right.
Maybe we'll go to Hassan, since
Hassan.
I'm here and I can translate.
Let's hear about the process of filmmaking and what you were trying to say.
Oui, est-ce que tu peux traduire? Bonsoir. Ben, merci pour
Oui,
l'invitation.
bien sûr.
Dis-moi, je pense
Good
qu'il m'a posé
evening
une
and
question.
thank you for the invitation.
Oui, alors bah écoute, je parle de mon film, c'est ça?
Oui, bien sûr. Introduis-toi et dis quelque chose.
D'accord. Alors bon, voilà, j'ai réalisé trois courts-métrages, un clip et un moyen-métrage, toujours sur le même thème, c'est sur l'immigration, les gens qui sont issus de l'immigration.
My films, the short ones and the middle-length ones, are all about the theme of immigration and migration. Yes.
Et voilà, et je tourne autour de ces thèmes, c'est-à-dire l'identité, la double culture, la multiculture, voilà. Et voilà.
On identity and double culture.
Voilà, et donc ce film-là, qui dure à peu près une quarantaine de minutes, voilà, c'est une sorte un drame social, enfin, un léger drame social, quoi. Voilà.
And it's a light social drama, the film that we are talking about. Let me make an interjection here and say that Hassan's film, which I will show you, the banner, it's called I Am Not Blond. It's not about human trafficking, although in it somebody does get kidnapped, but it's not about human trafficking. The reason why he is in this session is because we had too many people in the previous section in which he was supposed to be yesterday. So I brought him here so that he can have a chance to actually be able to talk about his film instead of every filmmaker saying one word and then we're out of time. So therefore, we have I Am Not Blond in a section where it was not originally programmed. So, Dirk, yes, you want to know more?
Absolutely. Tell us more about the process of actually making the film, getting the film made.
Oui, tu peux nous dire quelque chose à propos du processus de ton film?
Ben, en fait, je me suis inspiré toujours de mon vécu. Du coup, en fait, j'avais pendant un moment, étant jeune, j'avais l'impression que voilà, que j'avais pas trouvé ma place dans cette société. Je me sentais pas à l'aise. Vas-y.
Voilà, I always got inspired from my own personal experiences, and since I was very young, I always had the impression that I don't have a place in this society. I never found my place. Oui.
Voilà, c'est quelque chose en fait qui m'a toujours suivi, mais par contre avec le temps, ça s'est estompé parce qu'on prend de la maturité et on prend du recul sur soi et puis aussi sur son environnement.
But with time, it also got softer in its strength, this feeling of not belonging, and with a little bit of taking a step back and looking at things from a different angle, I am now able to express them in this way. Yeah. Oui.
Voilà. Et ce que j'ai fait, c'est que j'ai créé un personnage qui, voilà, se sent exclu, mais sans se rendre compte, enfin lui-même, il s'exclut. Lui-même, il finit par de s'exclure parce qu'en fait, il trouve pas de solution. Il trouve pas de solution et voilà.
I am talking about a character who feels excluded, and he does not find a solution to his exclusion of the situation in which he feels outside of the mainstream, and therefore that's what the subject is all about. Yes.
Du coup, le fait qu'il s'exclut lui-même, en fait, il perd contact avec les autres, il communique plus avec eux. Et à partir de ce moment-là, il se persuade de quelque chose, c'est qu'il est malheureux à cause des autres.
Yeah, because of that, he has convinced himself of a certain situation, of a view, worldview upon things, and he reflects his discontent or unhappiness on others.
Voilà. Du coup, comme il est malheureux, il est persuadé que c'est la faute des autres, bah, il va se mettre à faire des choses un peu bizarres. C'est que il va provoquer des rencontres. Et voilà, entre guillemets.
Ne disons pas tout parce que you don't want to give away the story of the film because there's a little secret there. So because he's convinced that his unhappiness, the others are responsible for his unhappiness, he projects his unhappiness on others and does certain things to them. And he was about to say what he does. So I stopped him there saying, okay, don't give away the story because then people will not want to see the film.
Wow. Very interesting. Very interesting. I mean, for me, that's always been the strongest link between social exclusion and dysfunction and crime. There isn't a relationship between crime and race, crime and gender, crime and economic background. There is a relationship between crime and social exclusion.
Yeah.
And dysfunction. Very powerful.
I'm going to try one more time to bring Ivana on, and if it doesn't work, Ivana, unfortunately, I have to stop it because it's extremely distracting to have popping in and popping out. I know it's not your fault, but you cannot, yes. Maybe you should talk as long as it's lasting.
Well, let's grab it while we can. Talk about your film, Ivana.
I think we have to give up on her because she's in a public place and she's relying on internet. That's why we insist on being on laptop and being on a bandwidth because it doesn't support and then you're popping in and out. So unfortunately, we will continue without Ivana.
Hey, she showed up. That's 3/4 of everything.
Yes, at the end. All right. So it's your floor. So.
Okay, Julia, what about the actual process of getting your film together and getting it going in the direction you wanted? What did that involve?
So, as you can imagine, Dirk, making a film about child trafficking is challenging because it's a hard subject matter to get support around because everybody wants to kind of have like happy, upbeat movies or action-packed thrillers or horror films. But in a way, to me, a film like this, it is the ultimate horror of what could happen to someone. So we ended up making this film on a micro budget with a lot of goodwill, a lot of love from a lot of the people involved, and a lot of passion through a nonprofit, Artists for Change. And we kind of like cobbled everything together and had to be very creative. We were lucky that we got some wonderful actors who were very passionate about the subject matter, who all kind of came on board and went on this journey with me. And I had to find, because I didn't have a very big budget to make this film. We ended up with a shooting on 15 days, which was tough, and so meant that I had to do a lot of preparation. So I really knew what I wanted, as it didn't allow me an enormous amount of takes. So I had to be very decisive with things. So the DP and I spent a lot of time doing our storyboards, thinking about shot lists, thinking about the kind of the tone, the shooting style of the film. I had a wonderful DP that I worked with on this, Peter Holland, who I'd worked with previously on the short film. Peter comes from a documentary background. And so I always wanted that, as well as doing a lot of like a much bigger budget feature films. He has a wonderful track record and has had films in Sundance, has done big budget films starring Bruce Willis and sorts of good things. But on this film, we had to be very creative with the way that we did things. And also with making a film about trafficking, one of the things I had to think very carefully about was who was the audience that I wanted for this film. So before I started shooting, I did a lot of, when I was still at kind of script stage, I did a lot of research. I read a lot of reviews and audience feedback on previous films that have been made on the topic. And the one comment that was kind of useful was worthy subject matter, but too graphic. I just couldn't watch it, or watch the first couple of minutes, but then I had to turn it off. I couldn't stomach it. So I made a conscious decision that as I wanted my, teenagers, families, the general public to see the film, rather than the kind of late night, kind of erotic film audience, I didn't want my film to be too gratuitous, and I also didn't want to have any nudity in the film. And so I went with that Hitchcock approach of what you don't see, but yet you imagine happening, is much worse than seeing a lot of kind of gratuitousness on screen. And so, you think with a film about trafficking, there would be like a lot of nudity, etc. But there's actually no nudity at all in my film. And then when we were on set and shooting, because it was very challenging, dark subject matter for the actors to throw themselves into, especially the younger actresses who were playing those trafficked girls, and Jane, who played Angie, I had to be very sensitive towards them. And so between takes, there'd be a lot of, are you okay? And lots of hugs. And I had to very consciously keep a light, upbeat atmosphere on set. So the darkness of the subject matter we were shooting didn't kind of really emotionally affect people. And also at the end of every day, try to kind of come up with a little bit of lightness and a lot of hugs to make sure that when those younger actors left set, they would be okay. But I didn't want them going home with the trauma and taking that trauma with them. Because it's difficult, and I really admire their courage. Like Jane Widdop, she showed enormous courage, and I was so lucky to have a fearless, committed young actress like her to play Angie. When we were at the auditioning stage, and I was looking at all the audition tapes, the moment I saw hers, she had this kind of rawness and vulnerability. I immediately knew that this was my Angie, and she really committed 100% to the role. And, those of you that have seen the film, I think you see it in her performance.
Hassan, what was the process of getting your film together? How difficult was it, or indeed how easy was it to get everything committed to film and get your story told?
À quel point c'était difficile ou facile de mettre ensemble ton projet?
Alors, en fait, mon film n'a pas été difficile dans le sens où j'ai peu de personnages, très peu de décors, et je l'ai écrit je l'ai écrit pour qu'il soit faisable, on va dire.
I didn't have much trouble because my film has very few characters in it, very few sets, locations, and I wrote it exactly to have those elements in mind.
Voilà, et comme j'ai pas eu de production, c'est un film autoproduit avec une équipe très réduite, je ne pouvais pas me permettre de faire entre guillemets un vrai film, c'est-à-dire avec beaucoup de personnages, avec beaucoup de décors. Donc j'ai simplifié au maximum pour que je puisse aller jusqu'au bout.
And that's one of the reasons I didn't have a production company behind me and a huge cast and big production values. So that is why I was able to do it with, in French, they say les moyens de bord, like whatever you have under your hand. So, yeah.
That's a very important point. I remember talking to Danny Boyle some years ago, after he directed The Beach, and he was talking about how he'd be directing a scene, and then he'd turn around with his back to the camera, and there'd be 250 people on the beach, who were associated with production company, the production companies, the exec, every single person had a role, and every single person had a view and an input, scene by scene. Whereas he compared that to his first film, that came out big, Trainspotting, which had a budget of 100 million, single source funding, and no input or creative control at all.
I remember Trainspotting when it first came out.
I was in Trainspotting. I had 3 words. I was a disc jockey that was obsessed with ABBA, and most of my work was cut because it was set to ABBA's music, and
wow.
ABBA wanted $9,500 per second.
Wow.
So somewhere there are images of me dancing to Dancing Queen in a ill-fitting purple suit with greasy hair and a pint of beer, but wherever, who knows?
That's interesting. Well, since we are not being able to bring Ivana back, so I'm going to take a moment and read some of the comments that our viewers are writing, because it's very interesting to see what people are saying. I have here Julie Simon. She's saying, powerful work. Thank you so much for making your film to help get more education and awareness out there. This is, I guess, to Angie, Lost Girls, to Julia. And then Bruce is saying, I've seen what I thought were trafficked kids that I was concerned about, but I wasn't sure what to do. Please tell us what we can do when we witness it in a safe way. Actually, it's Linda using Bruce's account. Then another message from Lucy, who I must say is a team member, but she's also playing in Hassan's film. Bravo to the talented filmmakers touching upon hard and challenging issues of our time and societies. Keep making films. And Julie comes back saying, yes, congratulations and bravo to all the filmmakers. So courageous of you to be committed, and so lovely to be so sensitive to your actors. It's very important. To making a film like this and sensitive. So I guess they're mostly comments, they're not questions. So I want to ask a question to Angie, because a few years ago, we had another film about human trafficking, and I'm currently involved with another one, which is in production, in development stage, also about human trafficking. This is a very important topic that very many people don't know much about. And in fact, just like Dirk said a little while ago, nobody in his right mind decides, what do I want to do when I grow up? I want to go into prostitution when I grow up. I mean, nobody says that, I don't think. And then these girls are lured most of the time by people that are trustworthy and close to them. That is the most important element that keeps coming up in all the films that we have seen. In the one we have shown a bunch of years ago, it was the father who sold the girls. I recently saw another film, Dear Sonia. It's also an Indian take. It's happening in India. Also, the parent, the father was involved. And in situations, most often it's the boyfriend who lures them. So maybe, Julia, you want to tell us something about how this trafficking happens so that the person is least suspecting, and then once they find out, it's too late.
Thank you, Nora, and thank you too for this wonderful festival that you put on, and for really being a champion of change. I love that you're also making a film on this topic, because the more awareness we can spread on this, the better. And trafficking is a global problem. It's happening in every country all around the world. And America, believe it or not, is one of the biggest countries in the world where trafficking is going on, and it is happening right here on our backyards. Now, in Angie, we see a number of different ways that teenagers are trafficked. Angie herself is trafficked through the Romeo recruiter, a young guy her age, who is working from the traffickers, and this is very true to life and happens a lot. Is the traffickers will often use a young girl, as you saw in my short film Lost Girls, which I made prior to this, or in Angie Lost Girls, it's a young boy who's good looking, you know, around her age, but takes an interest in her, is interested in everything she's doing, and he fills the gap that the parents have left open because they're very busy working long hours with best intentions, because they want to make money to put their kids in good schools and give them a good education. But unfortunately, they're not there to give Angie what she needs most. It's time and attention and interest in the things that she's interested in rather than the things that they want to pursue. Then we see Nala, the young girl in the film with the baby. She's recruited by the traffickers with a cleaning job, and that again happens a lot. Then we hear Mariah's story and the recovery scene at the end. She was recruited online. Online recruitment is becoming more and more prevalent, especially since the pandemic, because everybody's kind of inside right now. So unfortunately, these predators are getting into our homes. They're reaching teenagers through social media, through video game rooms. So it's really important for parents to keep a monitor on their teenagers' social media and also build trust with their children. So if they do get approaches online by strangers that seem a little odd or kind of out of place or unusual requests, that they talk to them about it. Then we see Zoe in Angie Lost Girls. You know, her storyline is she was rescued, was in a shelter, but the trafficker came and lured her back out of it because they know how to manipulate them. They know how to kind of work on their self-esteem, and they also terrorize the girls with such fear and threats to what if they leave, what they'll do to them or to their families. They really have them firmly under their thumb. And so I think the more we can recognize what the signs of someone being groomed for trafficking looks like, the more we might be able to save someone if we recognize those signs. And to answer the question that somebody asked from the chat, Nora, is that if you see anything, report it. Don't try and jump in and be a hero yourself, because sometimes these people can be armed and dangerous. But call 911 and report it. It's always best to call the 911 line, because if you call a trafficking line, you may not get an immediate response, and it may be a volunteer rather than the police who can take concerted action. But a lot of the Peace Force have special trafficking divisions and vice divisions, and when they get a tip, they will send people to investigate.
It is dangerous, it's true. The best way is not to interfere yourself, but to call help from authorities, from the police, from 911, because like you say, they're not people you can play chess with. They are people with dangerous arms, and they have bad intentions, and they will not stop at anything.
Yeah, because we have to remember the size of the business. You know, it's billions of dollars that are at stake for them. So they have informants everywhere. They're very clever. You know, trafficking goes on in hotels, motels, all around the place. You know, there's also trafficking that happens in massage parlors. There's trafficking that happens in private homes. You know, somebody who'd seen the short film that I did was walking in the hills and saw a young girl being pulled out of a car by a much older guy and being kind of almost pushed into the house. And then another time she saw some other young girls being kind of like ushered into that house and thought something odd was going on. So she called it in and reported it. And it turned out that it was a trafficking house. And so the police came and closed it down. So that's why I think, you know, the one thing that everybody can do is just keep their eyes open. And if you see something that doesn't look right, and I think we all instinctively know in our guts when something doesn't look right, report it. And then the other arena, I often get asked, you know, about, you know, how the public can help on this issue, is supporting organizations working in the field, because this whole area is desperately underfunded. And as you said, you know, aftercare. That's why in the Angie Lost Girls film, I didn't want to just make a film about trafficking, but I also wanted to make a film about the challenges of when something like that happens to you, like getting trafficked. How do you come back from that? And showing the pressures and the difficulties that Angie has reintegrating with her family, and that also her family has reintegrating with her, because the teenager they lost is very different from the teenager that is returned to them. And so they have to deal with and process that. And then Angie needs a lot of therapy, and she's getting threats from the traffickers. She has survivor guilt about the other girls that are still stuck with the traffickers. So, you know, she has all these kind of pressures on her too, as well as just kind of getting back. And I did a lot of research when I was at script stage on this project. So I had the former head of the child trafficking division as a consultant on the project, and he read various drafts of the script and gave me feedback. I had some survivor consultants. I also talked with a lot of people working in trafficking for various NGOs who were actually going out and helping to try to get teenagers off the streets, or working in the shelters that provide aftercare for victims, to get their feedback. So I really wanted, it was important to me to try and really make a film that was authentic to the subject and real and carefully researched. So I wanted to try and kind of keep it as close to home as possible, because this whole issue is so dear to my heart. And so it was very important to me to do the best that I could to try to kind of get things right.
Yeah, very important. Every little bit counts, so everybody can do whatever they can. I have a question here that's addressed directly to Hassan. It says, any thought about the situation today? If you were a young man today, would you find it harder, easier, the same to feel you belong?
Oui, est-ce que tu peux traduire? Parce que
Oui, je vais te traduire. Si c'est à propos de ta situation aujourd'hui. Si aujourd'hui tu étais un jeune homme aujourd'hui, est-ce que tu trouverais plus facile, plus difficile ou la même de ces sentiments de non-appartenance?
Question très difficile. En fait, ça dépend vraiment des gens, ça dépend des jeunes. Je pense que sur certains aspects, les gens se posent moins la question parce que, voilà, avec le temps, ils se sont vraiment, comment dire, incorporés, intégrés dans
It's
la
a very
société.
difficult question because it depends from the young person in question. It might be different today because people throw themselves into the heat of things, the everyday life, the situation, the society, and so on and so forth, and they don't think much about these things, incorporate themselves in. Oui.
Voilà. Et pour d'autres, je sais pas, quand j'observe, j'ai l'impression que oui, ça continue encore. Donc voilà, ils s'en reconnaissent toujours pas. Et c'est pour ça qu'ils prennent des fois des voies, on va dire entre guillemets radical ou voilà, si tu peux traduire ça.
And I know that, but today nothing much has changed. It still continues. People still feel out of place, and it depends on the person and what reactions they take to that feeling. And sometimes it can take a radical approach, and you know, it can manifest itself in much more, much stronger ways.
Voilà, ce que je voudrais dire, en fait, ça dépend, en fait, j'ai l'impression de deux éléments très importants. C'est l'environnement dans lequel on évolue. Ça, c'est très important parce que ça va vraiment définir beaucoup de choses. Et je pense que le deuxième élément, en fait, c'est quand on en sort, on est confronté à un autre monde. Et du coup, à partir de ce moment-là, c'est là où les choses peuvent évoluer et ça peut nous chambouler.
There are two things that I would like to stress. It's very important, the elements or the environment in which we evolve or develop. And also when we come out of that environment, the world that we confront and how the interaction with that world defines how we are going to become or be or react. Voilà. So I guess it's back to you, Dirk.
Hassan, have you got any plans for your next film, your next project?
Oui, en fait, j'ai déjà tourné un autre film. C'est un court-métrage de 17 minutes. Parce que en fait, là, on est en mixage. Donc, j'espère qu'il sera prêt bientôt. Et c'est toujours autour des mêmes sujets. Et voilà, avec un genre un peu plus dans la comédie. Voilà.
In fact, I already did another film. It's a 17-minute short, which is right now in post-production. It's always revolving around the same themes. And yeah, there you go. He's fast. He's working very quickly.
Voilà. Mais pour l'instant, je travaille toujours en autoproduction. Parce que c'est difficile d'avoir des financements, c'est beaucoup de travail et j'ai pas toujours le temps moi de m'occuper de ça.
De demande et tout ça. Yeah, but still it is in the auto-financed format because I am still self-funded and I don't have time because I'm also working full-time. I don't have the time to put together packages and apply for grants and funding and finances and so on and so forth. So it's mainly auto-funded, self-funded.
That's very interesting because I found in the past when I was working other jobs, I was more focused in doing it. And when I went full time, my natural laziness cut in. You know, so in terms of actually, I've always found that a real dilemma. You know, because if you have this pressure to create. And to make, and are still, you know, paying your bills and looking after yourself, it's not a bad direction. Because just from personal experience, every time when I go full time, I do end up wallowing a bit, and kind of, you know, and prevaricating and kind of going off and side things. But when I'm working at other jobs, but I get things done.
Tu veux de la traduction ou c'est bon? Ça va? Okay.
What about you, Julia? What's your next project?
I have a couple of projects that I'm developing. I've got another film about trafficking. It's more about the kind of Stockholm aspect of trafficking. And I've also got a nice kind of upbeat, inspiring comedy too, just to do something totally different. And then we're also developing a script about the homeless crisis. So I love making social impact films. But you know, every now and again, I do want to do something that's a a little lighter, because I must say it is quite emotionally hard to throw yourself into those dark worlds. And I remember one time when I was working on the script on Angie, Lost Girls, I'd been at this conference for survivors for research, and the next day I literally couldn't get out of bed in the morning. And I realized I think that I'm a kind of empath, and so I'd taken on so much from all the emotional stories that I heard, and so much emotion in the room that it gave me an emotional hangover. And it definitely does something to you when it fuels your passion, which is good because it gives you a necessity to tell the story because you care so much about wanting to try to make a difference. But at the same time, it weighs on you quite heavily. And when you hear like a lot of these tragic stories, even when I was talking to the people from NGOs and the detectives and stuff, you know, when you hear somebody mentioned earlier, you hear like stories about parents selling their children so they can kind of supply themselves with drugs and all these types of things. It is really heartbreaking, you know. So it definitely takes an emotional toll. And so one thing that I realized as a filmmaker, when I'm putting myself into these worlds to make these types of films, I have to really consciously look after myself and keeping like exercising. I'm a great, you know, believer in Kundalini yoga, and I do a lot of meditation and spiritual practice. And for me, that is key for my well-being, because if you're trying to kind of save everybody else by making all these films that make a difference, but at the end of the day, you run yourself into the ground or you sink into a depression, you know, because of all the stuff, you're not going to be able to help anyone. And I also want to, you know, put this out generally to the other filmmakers that are on there. I would really urge you, if you're making these social impact films, which I hope a lot of you will, because I'm a passionate, you know, advocate for, we have been blessed with these gifts of being able to tell stories and make films and know how to kind of do visual storytelling. It's so fantastic if we can use them for good. But at the same time, you have to take care of yourselves, because telling these dark stories can take an emotional toll on you. And as I mentioned earlier, you also have to be very conscious of all the people that you're bringing in to work with you on this subject matter and take care of all of them as well.
It rings a bell, actually, with me, because you're making one film and we're showing all these films. And of course, to show all these films, you're watching all these films and you identify with the people, you empathize with the people, you understand all the problems in the world that are going on. So it's inevitable that in the end, you start having nightmares about these things. So today, I must make a confession online. I took the time to do yoga.
I love it, Nora. That is fantastic. And I do think that we all need these, like, we need to give each other reminders of this.
Since we started on Sunday, I've been going 24/7, and if I'm not online constantly, I am between two live broadcasts. I'm answering emails. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. It's like, wow, it's been 24/7. So I felt, okay, I need half an hour to breathe. So you're right. We need to do that for ourselves. So let me just give ourselves a bit of an idea about how much time we've left. We still have a lot of time. We have 5 full minutes, and there is a lot that can happen in 5 minutes. So please, everybody, feel free to continue the chat.
5 minutes is a long time. You can say some good stuff in 5 minutes. Hassan, well, what do you do to keep yourself settled and in good shape when you're not telling these stories.
Tu peux traduire, Nora?
Oui, qu'est-ce que tu fais toi pour te garder en forme quand tu n'es pas en train de raconter ces histoires? Comment tu te tiens en forme?
En fait, moi, c'est la passion du cinéma. C'est ça qui fait que je tiens la forme et moralement, franchement, je vais bien. Je suis très. Pourquoi? Parce que j'ai un objectif que j'ai pas encore atteint. Du coup, je fournis des efforts. Enfin, j'écris des scénarios et tant que j'ai cette passion, je vais bien.
Well, what keeps going is cinema, because I'm so passionate about film and I have a goal which I have not attained yet. So I keep going because I love the art of cinema, and that's what feeds me. Yeah. And what about you, Dirk? Maybe you have to answer the question too.
Well, I used to do a lot of exercise. But not now. Sleeping is one of my favorite activities, and I love playing music. I love playing music in the street, and I find that very, very cathartic. And then the final thing is I gave up alcohol when I was 18, and I'm 62 now, and I drank soda. All I've ever drunk is fizzy drinks. And after a recent episode, the doctor and the surgeon advised me to stop drinking all the fizzy drinks and get onto red wine.
Seriously?
Yeah. So I've started drinking a fine Cabernet Sauvignon every evening for the first time in my life since I was 18.
That's what the French do, a glass of red wine.
So nothing stays the same. So I find a combination of the music, the street, and the glass of red wine, so long as I don't drive, does the trick for me.
Right. And speaking of that, we have happy hours at the film festival now. So at 6:15, just to give ourselves a little breather between this talk and the 6:15 happy hour, and I called it Happy Cine Hour because it's like a cine moment. So please, everybody, whoever is listening, come in and join us with a glass of wine or your preferred drink at hand. Unfortunately, we cannot offer it to you through the screen, but maybe that day will come too. And you're sitting in front of your computer, you push the button, the screen opens, and somebody hands you a glass of wine. You never know.
That's hysterical, Nora. And I have to say, I think all of us filmmakers are so grateful to you that despite everything kind of going on with the COVID and the pandemic, you found a way to make this festival possible and shine a light on all these issues and these films. So I think that's really fantastic. So I think we'll all have to raise a glass to you later.
Thank you. I will bring Natalie on here, who is quietly sitting in the green room, being there, backing us
Hello,
all
Natalie.
up in case. And she is the big assistant of the festival this year. She's in charge of sponsor and partner relations, but she's been wearing so many hats and doing everything. So this is a good moment to bring her on and acknowledge and thank her in public for all the late nights and 3 a.m. texts and all the stuff and last minute, can you get this together? And so on and so on. And I also have a bunch of people from the team who are following the broadcast. They're not in the studio, but they are here. We have Linda, Lucy, we have Jilly, we have everybody who's watching, Michael, who was asking a question earlier. So we do have a team. I am not alone. This is not my festival. I started it, I founded it, I believe in it, but I am not alone. And I'm grateful for the team. I'm grateful for the filmmakers who continue to tell socially relevant stories and are not affected by the commercial concerns in the world which we are living in, and instead decide to tell human interest and socially relevant stories. So thank you, everyone. I will ask Dirk if he wants to add one last thing before I profusely thank him for moderating and also thank the filmmakers.
Well, thank you very much for joining us and giving your time and sharing your films. Tremendous, great experience. I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much, and good luck with all your future storytelling endeavors.
Yes, and we are actually from the cafe mornings, an idea came about, and I will throw it out there so both of you will listen, of course, hear it, and whoever is listening still will hear it, that somebody said, why don't you do this cafe on a regular basis? It's a great place to come together, network, encourage each other, empower each other. And I felt, yeah, I don't think I can do it on a daily basis. And I don't think anybody wants to do that because people have other commitments, neither on a weekly, but once a month is a totally feasible thing. So look out for it, everybody. Once a month, it's going to be the Cafe Cine Socially Relevant Film Festival hour, when we can all get together, tell each other stories, maybe focus on a filmmaker each time to allow them the platform to tell their stories and so on and so forth. So again, thank you all. So I'm going to go off the air now, unless someone wants to say one last thing.
No, thank you very much. Goodbye and au revoir.
Au revoir.
Thank you.
Merci.
Au revoir.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
And thank you, everybody, for listening. Good luck to you, Hassan.
Yes.
Thank you to all of you.
Good luck. Thank you. Merci.
Bye.
Bonne chance. Thank you, Dirk.
Thank you. Thank you.
Nora. Thank you, team. Bye.
Merci, Nora.
Bye bye. Bye bye.
Salut, Nora.